Today for the leadership video, I'm filming from the campus of Southwestern Theological Seminary in Fort Worth. I actually went to school here, spent a lot of my life over here. This is a really beautiful campus, one of the prettier campuses in the DFW area. And behind me is a sculpture done. It depicts a significant moment in the life of Jesus where Jesus is seen washing Simon Peter's feet. You might remember this event from the biblical record in John's Gospel, John chapter 13. Jesus has come into Jerusalem in the triumphal entry. They've had a week of encounters between Jesus and the religious leaders, and as it comes to the culmination of that week, at the end of that week leads into Passover, and you might remember that on the night before Jesus' arrest and subsequent crucifixion, that he's with the disciples in the upper room in Jerusalem to celebrate the Passover meal with his disciples. And as they arrive, there's a tradition that the family, especially a wealthy home, a wealthy family, this seems to be a wealthy family in the Essene community in Jerusalem at that time period, would normally have a servant wash the feet of those who came to the home as visitors. Now in ancient time, this was a big deal because the roads are made of dirt, unlike this very concrete sidewalks everywhere we go, concrete roads, grass growing everywhere. In Jesus' day, there are livestock everywhere. The roads are dirt and it's dusty. When it rains, people would get very dirty. Their feet especially get very dirty. Shoes at that time were very primitive. You have a piece of leather with just some straps and holding it on, and so your feet would be filthy. And in addition to all that, unlike us where we would go to eat a meal together, we would sit at a table with our feet underneath the table. In Jesus' day, they reclined on pillows during the Passover and would recline, and therefore your feet were at the same level as the dining area. And so it was a disrespectful thing to not have your feet clean before dining, and it was a disrespectful thing for a host to not provide a servant to clean the feet of guests. And so the lowest task of servanthood in Jesus' day was the poor guy that was reduced to cleaning off the feet of individuals as they arrived as guests to an event. And you might remember from the biblical account in John chapter 13 that Jesus arrives at this home, and he goes into the upper room, and they're preparing to do the Passover meal together. And as they prepare to do the Passover meal together, Jesus observes that all of the disciples have come into this room with dirty feet, that none of them have taken the opportunity to not even wash their own feet. The task was so lowly, they wouldn't even wash their own feet, let alone wash the feet of another person. For the record, it does seem to me that Jesus' feet were clean. It seems to me that what Jesus did was what his disciples did not do. Maybe he arrived before them. Maybe he was the last one in. I don't know. But it seems to me that Jesus washed his own feet. So you have the Son of God, the creator of the universe, the Savior of the world, stooping to do the most menial task for himself before entering this home. He doesn't think to himself, well, a servant should have done this, and this is too low a task for me. But instead, he humbles himself. He does the task of a menial servant. He washes his own feet and then comes into the upper room and discovers there that his own disciples, his own students, have failed to do the most basic of tasks of washing their own feet. And in this moment, instead of lecturing them about, you guys march right back down there and you wash your feet before you come up in this house, like a mom would do with their kids before dinner. Let me see those hands. You know, your hands are filthy. Go, all of you march right now to the sink and wash your hands before you eat at the table. That's a very reasonable thing for a parent to do, and would have certainly been a reasonable thing for Jesus to have done in this moment. But instead, Jesus does the most shocking thing imaginable. He begins to remove his more formal garments so he doesn't get them dirty. He gets a towel, he gets a basin, fills it with clean water, and he stoops to wash the filthy feet of these very proud disciples, and he humbles himself before them like a common menial servant. And you might remember in that story, he gets to Simon Peter. I think everyone else was too afraid to say anything But Simon Peter finally speaks up, I think speaks for the group, the shock of the group, and says, "No way can you wash my feet." And in this moment, captured by this sculpture of Jesus washing Simon Peter's feet as part of that event, Jesus is captured in this sculpture of doing something that speaks not just to that moment and to the life of Jesus, because you might remember that Jesus says, "Do you know what I have done for you? I have left you an example for you to follow. Me, your master and Lord, has been the servant of you all. If me as the master and Lord are your servant, you should serve one another." And so in that moment, Jesus leaves for his disciples an example for them to follow. Not just to wash feet, but a broader example of when there's a time to serve other people, even if you're in a position of greater authority, of greater power or position or wealth or whatever it might be, to humble yourself before other people, regardless of station in life, and serve them. This is our model. This is our standard. Our standard for leadership is servant leadership. Our standard for leadership is not to say, well, there's other people who are below me who should do these tasks, but instead to say there's no task too low, there's no position too high or too lofty that would prevent me from serving other people. Now we see this in a lot of places. In the church, there should be a servant attitude by all people at church, whether the pastor or any other member of the church. You see this in the workplace, where a boss is seen acting as any other employee in the way they handle their job and the way they speak about other employees. We see this in the realm of sports, in a baseball environment, where the best player on the team is a servant of all if he does the extra things. You see him in the dugout picking up trash after a game. You see them picking up baseballs after a hitting round in the tunnels. You see them in the moving of, hey, I'll get the L screen and put it out on the field. You see it in a church environment where a person will say, no, I'll pick up trash, or I'll take the trash out, or things like that. I think you see it also in the home. And so if you're a student in your home, a lot of our life when we were students, we wake up, our parents spend a lot of their time thinking about our day, how they can help us with school, how they can help us get us to sports or music or church. But to wake up in the morning and say, how can I serve my family today? How can I be a servant of my family? If Jesus would serve his disciples like this, how then could I serve the people around me today? And so that's our devotional thought today in this area of leading like Jesus, or spiritual leadership. How does a spiritual leader lead? They lead by serving. To lead like Jesus is to lead like Jesus led. He became the servant of us all.